I sat on the edge of the bed, holding a cup of warm ginger tea in my hands. "Try drinking this," I said gently, extending the cup toward Mary. "It should help." She looked pale, exhausted. Her eyes were red, her hair tangled. Ever since she'd returned from Europe, she hadn't looked well. For the past few days, she'd been struggling with nausea, but I chalked it up to jet lag, exhaustion from the trip, or, at worst, an upset stomach from some local food. I knew she loved trying exotic dishes, and who knew what might not have agreed with her. Mary took the cup but didn't take a sip. Instead, she looked at me in a way that sent a chill down my spine. "Kurt," her voice was cautious, as if she were carefully choosing her words. "Yeah." She took a deep breath and averted her gaze, as if afraid to say it to my face. "I don't think it's food poisoning." "What do you mean?" "It's more like." She ran a hand over her stomach, and a dull ache bloomed in my chest. "The start of a new life." I blinked, trying to process her words. "Wait, you mean?" She nodded, and for a brief moment, a smile flickered across her face, as if she expected me to jump up in joy. But I didn't move. My mind was racing through the timeline. She had come back from Europe 2 weeks ago. The tour had lasted 2 months. Before that, Shit. I tried to remember the last time we'd had sex, but everything blurred together into a hazy backdrop. The math wasn't hard. I stood up slowly, as if the room had suddenly shrunk around me. "Are you sure?" My voice was even, but inside, everything was burning. "I took a test," she said quietly. I ran a hand down my face. My insides churned, but I forced myself to stay calm. I swallowed and pushed a smile onto my face. "This is unexpected." "Yeah, I'm still in shock myself," she laughed softly. I nodded, but something stirred inside me. I couldn't pinpoint exactly what was bothering me. The timing? The pregnancy itself? Or the slight hint of unease in her voice? "Are you sure?" I asked again. "What do you mean?" "Well, maybe you should see a doctor?" Of course, but the test already showed 2 lines. I forced my smile to widen, though my stomach felt like it was twisting into knots. "That's big news," I managed. "Yeah." She ran her hand over her stomach again, that fleeting smile returning. I stood there, my gut tightening. I wanted to be happy, but I couldn't. Logic told me everything was fine, but something deep inside me whispered, "Something is wrong." "Kurt, what's wrong?" Mary looked at me with slight concern. "I just wasn't expecting this," I admitted. "Well, you know, life throws surprises at you sometimes." She reached for me, placing her hands on my shoulders. I wrapped my arms around her, but even in that moment, something inside me resisted. I remembered the way we said goodbye before her trip, her kiss as she left, her promise to call me every day. She had held my hands, told me how much she would miss me. But now, my thoughts were somewhere else. Had we even had sex before she left? I tensed. How long had it been? 3 months? 4? Lately, she'd been traveling so often. Tours, meetings, trip preparations. We'd been spending less and less time together. I closed my eyes. Stop. Maybe I'm just overthinking this. "Kurt, are you okay?" Mary squeezed my hands. "Yeah," I lied, but the doubt refused to leave. We drove through the quiet streets of Portland on our way to the doctor's office. Mary looked relaxed, happy. She held my hand, tracing circles on my palm with her fingers, smiling the whole time. "What do you think we're having?" she asked, giving my hand a gentle squeeze. I smiled slightly, though deep down, I still couldn't fully grasp what was happening. "It's too early to tell, but for some reason, I have a feeling it's a girl," I said, trying to sound natural. "A girl?" Mary laughed. "I always thought you'd want a son. Someone to watch football with, go fishing." I shrugged, steering the car onto the main road. "Why not? I think I'd make a great dad to a girl too." "Of course you would," she said confidently, smiling again. I glanced at her from the corner of my eye, her excitement, the sparkle in her gaze. It all seemed so real, so right. So why did something still feel off? I pushed the thought away. I was being ridiculous. I couldn't just assume my wife had cheated on me, could I? I was just nervous. We parked in front of the medical center. "Ready?" she asked. I nodded, and we walked inside. The doctor was a pleasant woman in her 50s. Strands of gray peeked through her brown hair, but her eyes were warm and kind. "Well, let's take a look at your little one," she said as the nurse prepared the ultrasound machine. Mary gripped my hand tightly as the doctor spread the cold gel over her stomach and turned on the ultrasound. "There they are," she smiled. A tiny body appeared on the screen, its heart beating rapidly. I caught myself holding my breath. No matter my doubts, this moment was something special. "Wait a minute," the doctor frowned. I tensed. "Is something wrong?" She looked at us, then broke into a wide smile. "Oh no, everything is perfectly fine. It's just that you don't have one baby. You have two. Congratulations, you're having twins." I heard Mary gasp. "What?" Her voice was filled with excitement. "Twins?" The doctor nodded, pointing at the screen again. "Yes, see here? 2 heartbeats, 2 amniotic sacs. You're one of the lucky ones." Mary laughed and turned to me, eagerly waiting for my reaction. I forced a smile. This is incredible," I said, but inside, something snapped. "Twins. What's the estimated gestational age?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. The doctor glanced at the screen. "About 10 weeks. Give or take a few days, but based on their development, that's the approximate timeline." I felt the blood drain from my face. 10 weeks. My mind did the math. That put the conception right in the middle of her European tour. Not a week before. Not a week after. Right in the middle of it. "Are you all right?" the doctor asked, looking at me. I nodded quickly, hoping my face wasn't betraying the storm inside me. "Yeah, just a little surprised," I muttered. Mary smiled, squeezing my hand. "It's all happening so fast, huh?" I looked at her. She looked happy, content. I was barely holding myself together. The car ride back was silent except for the sound of tires rolling over asphalt. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Well," Mary finally said, gazing out the window, "that was unexpected." I clenched my jaw. "Yeah, unexpected." She turned to me. "You're acting weird." I took a deep breath. "Just thinking." "About what?" I tightened my grip on the wheel. "The timing." She frowned. "What?" I turned my head sharply toward her. 10 weeks, Mary." She blinked. "So? That's the middle of your tour." She paled for just a second, but quickly regained her composure. "So what?" "It's not an exact science. Doctors only give an estimate." "But it lines up," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. She shot me a glare. "Kurt, what are you trying to say?" I felt the anger rising inside me. "I just want to understand how this happened." "Oh my God," she groaned, slapping her palm against her thigh. "Are you serious?" "Yes, I'm serious." You actually think they're not yours?" I didn't answer. She gasped, her face twisting in fury. "You're insane. Just explain to me how I haven't touched you in months, but you're 10 weeks pregnant." "You're just scared of being a father," she shouted. "You're looking for any excuse to push me away. Don't you dare turn this around on me." I snapped, slamming my palm against the steering wheel. "God, you're paranoid. You've lost your mind." She was shaking, her fists clenched, breathing hard. "Just tell me the truth, Mary. I don't owe you anything." "So you're refusing to explain?" "Because there's nothing to explain. They're your babies." I suddenly pulled over to the side of the road. The silence was deafening. I turned to her. "Mary." She wouldn't look at me. "Did you cheat on me?" "Oh my God. I cannot believe you're even asking me that. Tell me the truth." She didn't say a word. I closed my eyes, my pulse pounding in my temples. "We're getting a paternity test," I said firmly. She snapped her head toward me. "No." I stared at her, stunned. "What?" "We're not doing that." "Why?" "Because you should trust me, not some stupid test." I looked at her, and in that moment, everything became crystal clear. I restarted the engine and pulled back onto the road. The silence in the car was suffocating, but I already knew, sooner or later, the truth would come out. I didn't know how much longer I could take this. It had been days since the doctor's visit, but Mary had been avoiding the conversation at all costs. Every time I brought it up, she either threw a tantrum or suddenly acted like she wasn't feeling well. "Kurt, you're killing me," she screamed one evening when I tried once again to get the truth. "You won't let me live in peace. You suspect me of everything. You're just scared of being a father." "I'm scared." I crossed my arms, watching as she dramatically pressed a hand to her forehead. "Mary, I just need answers. And I need support." Her voice shook, and I could see tears welling up in her eyes. The old me, the former Kurt, might have softened at that. But now, I saw it for what it was. She wasn't crying because she was hurt. She wasn't crying out of fear. She was crying because she was afraid I'd uncover the truth. I clenched my jaw, holding back the words I knew I'd regret later. "We're doing a DNA test," I repeated. "No." "Why not?" "Because I already told you everything." I took a deep breath, staring at her. "Fine. If you won't talk, I'll find out myself." She froze for a second, but then rolled her eyes. "Oh, for God's sake. Now you're playing detective." "Guess we'll see," I said, turning and heading for the door. She shouted something behind me, but I wasn't listening anymore. If she wasn't going to tell me the truth, I'd get it another way. I decided to set up a dinner. I'd invite the women she toured with, make it seem like I just wanted to celebrate the pregnancy with her friends, and watch how they reacted. I booked a table at a restaurant, but Mary insisted we host the dinner at home. "It'll be cozier," she said like nothing was wrong. I smiled and agreed. Perfect. Let her walk into the trap herself. By 8 p.m., everyone had gathered at our house. Jessica, Kate, Lindsay, and Amanda, Mary's closest friends. The women laughed, chatted, and caught up on life. Mary was glowing, pretending everything was perfectly fine. I watched closely. As I poured wine for the women, I casually said, "So, ladies, I'm sure you've all heard Mary's pregnant." They all nodded enthusiastically. "Yes, we're so happy for you guys." Kate said, "It's such a surprise." Lindsay added, taking a sip of wine. I smirked. Yeah, surprise is an understatement. They laughed, but I noticed something. Jessica and Amanda exchanged a glance. "Gotcha. And we already have an estimate on the due date," I continued, keeping my tone light. "Doctor said she's about 10 weeks along." I watched their faces. A momentary pause. Kate quickly looked away. Jessica stared into her glass. Amanda pressed her lips together. But most of all, I was watching Mary. She kept smiling, but her shoulders tensed ever so slightly. "Yes, 10 weeks," she repeated, acting like it was completely normal. "That's what, right in the middle of your tour?" I asked, looking at the women. They exchanged another glance, and the air grew heavy. "Well, yeah, I guess," Lindsay muttered. "But pregnancy timelines aren't exact," Jessica quickly added with a nervous smile. Of course, I nodded. "Just curious. How was the tour, anyway? Anything unusual happen?" "Oh, nothing special," Mary said a little too quickly. I looked at her. "Really?" She forced another smile. "Yeah, just concerts, traveling, a few parties, the usual." "Parties, huh?" I asked, feigning interest. She bit her lip. "Nothing crazy." I glanced around the table. They all looked tense. They all knew something. Something I didn't. I decided not to push it. Let them think I suspected nothing. By the time dinner wrapped up, I walked the women to the door. Mary stayed behind in the kitchen, tidying up. As everyone was leaving, Amanda lingered. "Kurt," she said quietly. I looked at her. She glanced over her shoulder, making sure Mary wasn't listening. "We need to talk," she whispered. I raised an eyebrow. "When and where?" "Oaks Bottom. Tomorrow." I nodded. "Okay." She gave me a quick, nervous nod before hurrying out after the others. I closed the door and exhaled. Tomorrow, I'd finally get the truth. Oaks Bottom wasn't too crowded at this hour. A low hum of conversations, the clinking of glasses, the smell of beer and something fried lingering in the air. I picked a table in the corner, one with a clear view of the entrance. A few minutes later, Amanda walked in. She looked nervous, scanning the room before spotting me. I raised a hand, and she quickly made her way over, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thanks for coming," I said. She nodded but didn't smile. What are you drinking? Whiskey, she answered without hesitation. I raised an eyebrow but said nothing, ordering 2 strong pours. When the bartender set the glasses in front of us, Amanda immediately took a large sip. All right, Kurt, she said, setting the glass down. You already have a suspicion, don't you? I nodded slowly. I need the truth, Amanda. She took a deep breath, interlocking her fingers as if bracing herself. Okay, then listen carefully. She hesitated for a moment, as if gathering courage, then finally started. From the first day of the tour, Mary was different, she said. Like she suddenly didn't care about any responsibilities anymore. She partied like she was 20 again. I frowned. She's never been much of a party girl. Amanda let out a bitter laugh. Well, then she was just hiding it from you. She took another sip before continuing. Every night, she got blackout drunk. Not just a couple of drinks. She went all out. Clubs, bar tops, dancing on tables. A tight knot formed in my stomach. You're serious? Kurt, she could barely walk back to her room. I clenched my jaw. And this happened all the time? Amanda nodded. Every single night. The girls and I tried talking to her, but she didn't care. What did she say? Amanda looked away, like she was ashamed to even repeat it. She laughed, said she was just having fun. I stayed silent, waiting for more. And when I reminded her about you, do you know what she said? I slowly shook my head. Amanda inhaled deeply, meeting my eyes. She said, relax, he'll never find out. My heart stopped for a second. What? We only live once. I'm young. I want to enjoy myself. Kurt's a great guy, but he's in America, and I'm in Europe. My fists clenched, my knuckles turning white. And this guy? Amanda swallowed hard before nodding. Julian. He was part of the organizing team, worked with us in Paris. He and a couple of other guys partied with us for a few nights. But he was the one she spent the most time with. My jaw tightened. You're sure? Kurt, I can't say I saw them in bed together, but I saw them leave together. I saw him hold her in clubs. I saw her not push him away. I saw how she flirted with him like you didn't even exist. My pulse pounded in my temples. I tried talking to her, Amanda continued. I told her, Mary, stop this. Are you really going to throw everything away? She looked at me, her expression full of regret. She just laughed and said, relax, I've got it under control. I ran my hands down my face, trying to keep myself from snapping. Why are you telling me this now? Amanda studied me for a long moment. Because I can't watch you suffer anymore. I closed my eyes, feeling the storm raging inside me. She hadn't just cheated on me. She didn't even try to hide it. And she wanted me to believe those kids were mine. I opened my eyes and met Amanda's gaze. Thank you, I said quietly. She nodded. What are you going to do? I inhaled deeply. I don't know. But there was one thing I did know. She wasn't getting away with this. I drove home, Amanda's words looping in my head like a broken record. Relax, he'll never find out. We only live once. Kurt's a great guy, but he's in America, and I'm in Europe. I tried to picture her saying it, laughing, without a shred of guilt. I pictured her letting Julian touch her, hold her, kiss her, leaving with him, knowing she had a husband back home. Something dark and cold grew inside me. Anger. No, not just anger. Vengeance. Just leaving? Just divorcing her and letting her walk away without consequences? No, that wasn't enough. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had mocked me, lied to my face, played the victim. She wanted me to take responsibility for children that weren't even mine. She laughed behind my back. I exhaled slowly, steadying my breath. All right, you want to play games, Mary? Let's play. I wasn't a man who acted on impulse. If I was going to do something, I was going to do it right. I spent the rest of the night at my computer, researching my options. Divorce? That was step one, but not the only step. If she wanted to keep her perfect image, I was going to make sure she lost everything. First, the paperwork. The prenup? It was ironclad. I was going to make sure she walked away with nothing. Second, her reputation. She loved to play the devoted wife, the loyal friend. She had carefully built that image. I was going to destroy it. And I was starting now. When I got home, Mary was lounging on the couch, scrolling through her phone like nothing was wrong. She didn't even look up. "Where were you?" she mumbled, not taking her eyes off the screen. I smiled. "At a bar." She finally glanced up, frowning. "A bar? Alone?" "No. With Amanda." Her face tensed, but she quickly masked it. "Why?" I sat down across from her, crossing my arms. She wanted to tell me the truth. I lived for that moment, watching her expression shift. First, confusion. Then realization slamming into her like a freight train. What? Her voice wavered. "You lied to me this entire time, Mary," I said, my voice calm, even, and I let it slide. I told myself maybe I was wrong. Maybe you were just scared to admit it. But now I know everything. She froze. "Kurt, you're misunderstanding." "Oh, am I?" I let out a short, humorless laugh. Maybe Amanda got it wrong too. But here's the thing, Mary. You acted like a goddamn whore that entire tour. She gasped like I had struck her. "How dare you? How dare you?" I leaned forward. "No, Mary. How dare you?" She trembled, but then something shifted. Her eyes burned with fury. I knew it. I knew that bitch would stab me in the back. I exhaled slowly. "So you're admitting it?" She snapped her mouth shut. I looked her up and down. "You want to know the real traitor, Mary?" I said coldly. "Look in the mirror." Panic flickered in her eyes. "Kurt, please, you have to understand. It was just a mistake." "A mistake?" I let out a dark laugh. "You cheated for months. You laughed at my trust. And you call that a mistake?" She went pale. "Kurt, what are you going to do?" I stood, pulling a folded document from my pocket. "First, we're getting a divorce. Second, you're getting nothing. No money. No support. You'll get exactly what you deserve." She clutched her dress, her breath hitching. You can't." I smirked. "Oh, trust me. I can." She swallowed hard. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" Her voice trembled. I turned back. "To prepare the final act of your downfall." And then I walked out, leaving her sitting there in horror. But this was just the beginning. I wasn't in a hurry. I wanted everything to go according to plan. When I told Mary she was about to face humiliation, I wasn't bluffing. For too long, she had lived in a world where lies had no consequences, where she could do whatever she wanted and then simply smile and say, "Oh, I didn't mean to, it just happened." "No, Mary. Now, you face the consequences." She was the one who insisted on meeting. "Kurt, please, we need to talk." Her voice trembled over the phone. I knew she was panicking. Since our last conversation, I hadn't returned home. She called, texted, even tried to catch me at work, but I was ready for all of it. And now, here she was, sitting across from me in a small cafe, pale, exhausted, but still trying to play the innocent victim. "Kurt, she started, but I raised a hand. "Straight to the point, Mary." She bit her lip. I made mistakes." I laughed. "Mistakes? Mary, forgetting to set an alarm or dropping your phone in the toilet is a mistake. You cheated on me, lied to my face, and tried to make me raise another man's children." Her head snapped up. "You can't talk to me like that. And you could do this to me?" Silence. "Kurt, I was lost. The tour, the drinking, the new environment. I didn't know what I was doing." "Didn't know?" I leaned forward. "Then why, when people reminded you that you had a husband, did you say, 'Relax, he'll never find out'?" Her face twisted. "Amanda," she hissed. I smirked. "Yeah, she told me everything. And you know what? She's the only one who had the decency to be honest. She betrayed me." I laughed. "No, Mary, you betrayed me." Her fists clenched, shaking with anger, but I didn't give her a chance to put on another performance. I reached into my jacket and pulled out the papers. "Here." She blinked, looking down at the documents. "What's this?" "Divorce." She sucked in a sharp breath. "Kurt, please." Her eyes pleaded with me. I leaned in. "You knew this was coming. But we can fix this." "Fix this?" I let out a dry chuckle. And how do you suggest we do that, Mary? Pretend none of this happened? That I just forget, and we go back to the way things were? She swallowed hard. You loved me once. I nodded. Yeah, I did. For a moment, hope flickered across her face. But then I continued. And then I found out who you really are. Her lips trembled. She looked at the papers, then back at me. Kurt, what if they are your children? I leaned back, smirking. Oh, don't worry, Mary. The moment they're born, you can take a DNA test anytime you like. She froze. If you want to humiliate yourself even further. I saw the realization dawn in her eyes. She knew. She knew the test would confirm everything. She knew she had no way out now. Her hands trembled as she grabbed the documents, scanning through them as if she could find some escape clause. This isn't fair. No, Mary. What you did wasn't fair. She covered her face with her hands, trying to hide her tears. But I didn't feel pity anymore. I stood up. You have a week to sign them. She sniffled but didn't respond. I grabbed my jacket and walked toward the exit. Before stepping out the door, I turned back one last time. Mary sat there, hunched over, clutching a handful of napkins. The divorce papers lay beside her, her hands shaking too much to hold them. I stepped outside, took a deep breath of the cool evening air, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Justice was served.